Hello all, this video is on well discussed controversial topic cattle trade rule. First of all, let's understand about this cattle trade rule, or let's take an overview about the important things related with the cattle trade rule. First, understand that this rule has been notified by the Environment Ministry. So it is named Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Regulation of Livestock Market Rules 2017, as it has been issued under this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. So this has been notified by the Environment Ministry on May 2017. The aim of this act was to tighten rules related with livestock trade and again transport of cattle to this animal markets to ensure better welfare of these animals and also to prevent smuggling related with it. But here the main controversy related with the rule was the rule banned trade of cattle for the purpose of slaughter. That means in animal markets the trade of cattle could not be done for the purpose of slaughter. So this has been controversial from many grounds, and it also had severe effects or impacts on many industries and again other or different segments of society. So because of this, Supreme Court has suspended the ban on this cattle trade for slaughtering, and again because of this Supreme Court stay over this ban, now central government has decided to come up with new legislation or new law after taking up suggestions from different fields. So that is the present scenario. Now let's see more about it. To have a better understanding about this cattle trade rule, or specifically related with that cattle trade which is controversial, you also ought to know about these points. That is, this rule demands that both the purchaser or seller of this cattle have to come up with an undertaking or some written declaration that they are not intending this trade for slaughtering. Okay. That means even the farmer has to come up with a proof to say that or to show that they are an agriculturist, and again there are also clauses that says that this farmer should not resell the cattle, or the person who has bought this should not resell this within 6 months. And again the agriculture market, the people who are examining this agriculture market, they are even responsible to make sure that this cattle trade is not intended for slaughtering. Then other than that, it's found that, or it's from this it is well understood that markets could only trade cattle for agriculture purpose. That means the trade is intended for the agriculture purposes, like especially related with the ploughing or for milch animals. Only the farmers could buy from it for their own different agriculture purposes. So this means that cattle trade is not for slaughtering, for food needs, or even that has clauses which restricts cattle cannot be sold for any religious purpose. Many different religions even have some practices or sacrifices or killing of these cattle. So that has also been banned, or the trade for cattle within this agriculture market cannot be taken place even for that purpose. And one more thing, other than the earlier rule, now it's found that the carcass of dead animals, the farmer cannot sell the carcass of dead animal to a trader in the agriculture market. Here it's specifically noted that the carcass of animal, the dead animal which is due to any natural causes. So the new law makes it clear that if the cattle need to be slaughtered, then that has to be brought directly from farmers from their farmland. Now let's see the government explanation for coming up with this rule, or what is the opinion of the animal rights activists or the people who are supporting this rule. So they are of the opinion that this rule will ensure food safety, as now there is stringent rules for the cattle trade or livestock trade, then also the traceability of these animals. Then again, they are of the view that now there won't be any smuggling or illegal slaughtering of cattle. Then other than that, the people who are really supporting this rule within the government and outside the government, they claim that this rule which disallow trade in animals in the animal market for slaughtering, that will not have any effect on the abattoirs or meat processors. The reason put forward by these people for that is that they're saying that now these people who are slaughtering, they can just directly buy it from the farmers. So there is no issue even if there is a ban on cattle trade specifically for slaughtering in this animal market. So they even find that actually eliminates the middleman between the farmer and the slaughtering agent. But there is also one more view, or you must also understand the other side. When these people are of the stand that there will not be any effect on this cattle trade for slaughtering, as they can get it directly from these farmers, but they are just ignoring the fact that in India, cattle trade is not like that takes place in the western side or western countries. That is, there will be two kinds of cattle, one for dairy cattle for dairy, or especially for this meat, those are referred like beef cattle. But in our country there is no that distinction between this cattle. The cattle which is reared for milch, or the milch animals itself, after its productivity goes down, or when it becomes unproductive, maybe after 9 years of its contributing to milk production, then the farmer will take the unproductive milch animal to this cattle trade for beef or for their meat or for slaughtering. So that is what happening in India. And again, note the point that the 90% of this cattle for slaughtering that comes from this animal markets. So when these people are of this view, they are ignoring that fact. Now let's take a look at the negative impacts of this rule on different segments of the society or different segments of the economy. This rule actually hits the growth of economy. If we consider this buffalo meat export, you'll understand that now our country is one of the leading buffalo meat exporter globally. And if you consider the last year, 2016-17, you'll find that the sales of buffalo meat was around 1.3 million tons, which was worth around $3.9 billion. And if we look into the leather industry, or if you take the leather industry and buffalo meat exporting industry together, you'll understand that both is worth around some $16 billion. So this says that if this rule is being implemented, it will be negatively affecting this buffalo meat exports. As you know that, as I've already told you that 90% of the cattle for slaughtering for these purposes come from this animal markets only. Only 10% the cattle for slaughtering they get directly from farmers. So you'll understand how badly it will affect these two industries and how it will negatively impact the growth of our economy. Note that this rule has come up with an expansive definition of animal markets. This has a negative impact or a huge impact on farmers and traders. So if you see the definition that goes like this. So the definition for animal market does not say the simple definition that what we actually understand by the animal market. But it is in such expansive definition, it even consider the area that is related with, or there are some terms like lairage of or lairage adjoining a market or a slaughterhouse, which itself can, or which even intends slaughterhouses itself can be seen like some kind of animal market. So this expansive definition makes it very difficult for any slaughtering agent to get or procure this cattle from farmers, or a farmer to directly sell to slaughterhouses, because from this definition of slaughterhouses, it even seems that slaughterhouse itself is a animal market. Or it is so difficult for both the farmers or the traders, slaughter agents or the traders or abettors, to come in direct contact for this sales. So that means this whole rule actually makes farmers as the victim, because the rule makers are not considering that for the farmers this was not just a market. For them, actually this animal market takes place weekly manner, and it was a place for them to find out or for their remuneration. Especially this dairy farmers, for them there will be unproductive animals. So when they come up with this unproductive animals, for them it was an easy means to find bidders for their unproductive animals, and they could easily liquidate these animals into cash, or they could easily remunerate from these unproductive animals. And even for the traders, now it's a huge challenge for these traders to go forward with this kind of trade in the animal market, as the 90% or the majority of the trade in the animal market or related with cattle was specifically for slaughter. So this also affects the livelihood of this small scale abettors and the traders or slaughter agents. Then this also says that it also has a negative effect on dairy sector of our country. Because if you understand this point, you will understand that the farmers earlier, like if this rule was not there, then the farmer could directly go to the animal market and sell their cattle. Especially, as I said, it is mainly taken for slaughtering. So when this rule comes, now they cannot do that. And the traders they'll have to wait for some traders, they'll have to find out some traders to sell their unproductive animals. As you understand that these farmers will be almost selling their spent animals. That means, as I said, that animals will be, or the cattle will be the unproductive cattle. So it will be after some years of milking from that animals, these farmers will be forced to sell it when they become unproductive. So for these farmers, it will be very difficult other than through the means of this animal market to find some traders to get their animals, because they are not that farmers with that large number of animals with them to sell. They will be the farmers with some few cattle with them to sell sometimes when it becomes unproductive. So now they do not have such an opportunity to sell like that in the animal market. And even for the traders, it will be very difficult to go and find these farmers from different regions. So that says that those unproductive animals whom they could liquidate or sell it and make some cash out of it, now it is not easy for them to sell it, and it will become a burden. Let's see how it becomes a burden. It means that as they cannot go for sales, they'll have to provide for the resources like cattle and all other for sheltering, everything they'll have to spend on this unprotective animals, which means that which they could have actually invested in other protective animals. But because of this rule, they won't be able to do that. So what happens is that because of this problem, they'll be forced to raise the price of different animal products, I mean the cattle products like milk or ghee, so that they can finally get this cash out of it, or to even sustain that unprotective animal, they need more money. So it even will lead to rising of price of different dairy products. That is also very unviable for a sector like dairy. So as we have seen, the clause which says that the carcass of dead animals due to some natural causes cannot be sold by the farmers to traders. That says that now the farmer will have to incinerate such animals. So earlier, if such things happens, he could trade it, and it has specifically for leather industry. Such sales mainly takes place, or it was intended for the leather industry. So that says that again, it will have a negative impact on farmers' livelihood or remuneration, and again, it will have such impact on leather industry too. Then other than all this, even we can see that this rule will actually affect a whole lot of weaker sections of our country. If we consider the minorities or some certain weaker sections like that of Dalits or some lower caste Hindus, you understand that these people were more employed in some menial works related with this leather industry, like that of tanneries. So if anything happened or these rules go forward, then as we have seen, it will drastically have an impact on the leather industry. So it will reduce the employment of such people, or will make them unemployed, or it even will have an effect on the Muslim population, the working Muslim population. So it is found that like most of, or a certain percentage of Muslim population is engaged with some trade with this cattle slaughtering. So that says that this rule will even have an impact on different sections of our society. So from this slide, you have to understand that it will not only affect the growth of our economy, but it will also have negative impact on the society as it affects the millions of population in our country. Now let's see the different important controversies or criticisms related with this cattle trade rule. The first one is that this cattle trade rule, which is notified by this Environment Ministry, has not been placed before Parliament. So this one you must understand. Actually, the chapter 11 of this parliamentary procedures makes it clear that there must be, if any rules, if government is coming up with any rules or enacting any rules, then that has to be placed before the Parliament. Or even the Act, that is the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960, that also says that, or the section 38A of this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960 makes it clear that if the government is going to make any rules related with the Act, then it has to be that concerned ministry has to place it before the Parliament and has to get the approval from the Parliament. So that has been grossly violated. Then another important controversy is that it's found that actually the rule which has been enacted under this Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960, it says that if you go through the rules and if you go through the 1960 Act, it will tell you that actually it's all against the objective of the 1960 Act. Objective was prevention of any infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering on animals. So that was the objective, and again it's found that this infliction of pain or unnecessary suffering on animals when these animals are slaughtered. Under this 1960 Act, it was clearly mentioned that this slaughtering of cattle for food is an exemption for cruelty towards animals. And it was also made clear, or a specific section of this act also made clear, that the slaughtering of the purpose in their own ways, it is not offensive under this law. So when that parent law, the 1960 Act for Prevention of Cruelty towards Animals, that has clearly mentioned that, or the objective has also been mentioned. It is very clear from this, the delegated legislation of this rule, the delegated legislation, that is this cattle trade new rule, that is all against the objective of the parent act, that is the 1960 Act. So in that sense itself, this delegated legislation is all void. Actually, this matter is a state subject. If you see, it is mentioned that market and fairs, or preservation or protection and improvement of stocks, it is under the state list. So this law is actually, or this rule is actually against the cooperative federalism of a country. One of the major controversies related with this rule is that it is violating some important fundamental rights and constitutional rights. You understand that these rules are actually violating Articles 91G, Article 21, 29 and Article 301. Article 91G provides the right to any individual to involve in any trade or occupation. So that fundamental right is being violated when there is a ban on this cattle trade for slaughter. And the important fundamental right, that is Article 21, which provides for right to life and personal liberty. We know that it gets violated when Article 21, which provides for right to life and personal liberty, is also being violated because of this rule. And you can also understand it has also got implications on the food habit of people, or the freedom of the people to go for this beef or this kind of animal food, as this act like an indirect ban on cattle slaughter. It also have implications on minority rights when the weaker section and the minority sections of the society is affected through this rule. Even the Article 301, that is the constitutional right, which talks about right for free trade, commerce or intercourse between different states of the country or throughout the country, even that is being violated, as there is a clause in this rule which says that farmer who is buying this cattle cannot sell this to any other state without the permission of the state government or without the permission of the government. So that even says that interstate trade, that also restricts the interstate trade. And many critics are of the view that actually this is a backdoor nationwide ban on cattle slaughter. It's found that the central government is actually taking this ban on cattle slaughter through the lens of this animal cruelty, because animal cruelty has been found in the concurrent list. So as animal cruelty that has been under this concurrent list, now the central government has the right to make some laws related with it. But we have seen even the act that defines this animal cruelty, even that provides the exemption for slaughtering of cattle for food. So these are the major controversies related with it. Now let's understand this present standards and way forward. So as we already discussed, Supreme Court has stayed this ban on cattle trade for slaughter. So because of this, now central government is assured that it will look into the rule, or it will come up with a new rule. So for that, central government has actually now sent letters to different state governments asking them to write back to central government articulating their opinion on this notified rule. So central government now is of the stand that now they will get the suggestions and feedbacks or comments related to this rule, and they will consider those suggestions or feedback, and they will come up with the new drafted rule, and after that it will be made for public consultation. And now it's found that they are also making meetings with the different stakeholders like traders, animal rights activists, etc. So now we'll have to wait and see what is going to happen next related to this cattle trade. So we can even make a suggestion, if actually the government's aim is to prevent the animal cruelty related with this cattle trade, then other than this ban, their focus must be to modernize the abattoirs or the slaughterhouses. And again, the regulators coming up with some stringent rules so that, or stringent standards, so that there will be every measure to make sure that the livestock is treated properly or any unnecessary pain is not inflicted for these animals. Thank you.